Welcome to the Training Ground Guru podcast in association with Genius Sports. In every episode, we bring you insights into the teams behind the teams in professional football. Coming up on today's episode.
What was it like working with Jurgen Klopp? What made him so special?
Everything. And he's someone that with simple words can make you feel that you can conquer the world with him. He can generate so much inner motivation. You can conquer everything. And I think his sensibility and his view of football is something really special.
I'm Simon Austin, and it's great to be back with a new season of the Training Ground Guru podcast. Together with our new sponsors, Genius Sports, we will be bringing you a big interview every month with a leading figure from football. This month's guest is Vitor Matos, the former head of elite development at Liverpool. Vitor worked closely with Jurgen Klopp during 5 years at Anfield and helped deliver a new generation of young talent, plus a number of trophies. Most recently, the Portuguese has been assistant to Pepin Lijnders at Red Bull Salzburg in Austria, before the duo departed last December. Vitor told me what it was like to work with Klopp, how Arne Slot has adapted things at Anfield, and why he thinks Curtis Jones and Jarell Quansah can be Liverpool's leaders of the future. We hope you enjoy this podcast, and if you do, please give us a follow via your preferred provider. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast, Vitor.
Thank you, me, for the invitation, and it's a pleasure being here and speaking with you and sharing experience.
Where are you speaking to us from today, Vitor?
So currently I'm in Porto in Portugal. I'm here since January. That's my hometown.
And what's been happening since you left Salzburg in December?
Nothing special in terms of football-wise, but I'm enjoying my time, enjoying the pleasure of watching a game without the professional view, let's say like that. Also enjoying the time to be a father and enjoying the time with the family, and also being able to reflect and think about the future, about the past, about the last moments in football. So it's been a good time. It's been a really good time.
How do you reflect on that 6 months at Salzburg now?
It was a really interesting experience, something that personally was a really learning situation. So we start really good with good expectations in terms of the squad and good expectations in terms of the club. We were the first Austrian team to qualify through playoff to the Champions League. So that's how we started. And we, on that moment until the first international break, we had really good game quality already and consistently showing or getting closer to the idea that we want to pass and implement as well and develop. So it was a really good start. And then after that, we suffered as well with the good thing of being qualified for the Champions League. The amount of games, the squad in terms of size, at the same time, injuries on the best two players of the squad, I would say, or the more important players of the squad regarding the dynamic that we wanted. And that created a little bit of instability, starting to get less consistency on the game and on the quality of the game. So, and then it's always about expectations, performing, and that's football.
It looked like it would be a nice fit with Jurgen Klopp coming in as the head of football for the Red Bull Group, your old boss at Liverpool. So it was a bit of a surprise for an outsider to see yourself and Pep go just before he came in. But were those two periods separate? Did he have any say in that decision?
No, he spoke about that publicly already. He only started in January. And I think, like he said, the idea was that everyone can make their decisions until that moment. So he will only get involved on everything after he get on boards, and that happened on the January. So it's a matter of timings. It's a matter of how the club are in that moment. So how we are in that moment as well. And I think in football, if it doesn't click, it doesn't click. So it's better that everyone can move on, and that's what happened.
We've seen quite a few players go from Red Bull clubs to Liverpool in the Jurgen Klopp era, and the style of play seemed very similar. Did you see a lot of parallels between the two clubs?
No, different reasons or different questions regarding that. So one thing is the quality of the players that we sign from the Red Bull clubs, let's say like that, because we sign also from Leipzig and we sign also from Salzburg. And it's more related with the quality of the players and related with the potential that all these players have. Red Bull as a group, they really go for the potential and talent players, and their idea is to develop that. So of course it's a big spot when you are looking for these kind of players that can reach really high level. And then the other part of the question is regarding the game idea or the game style that is implemented in Red Bull until this moment so far. And yeah, there is similarities regarding the pressing mentality, the aggressiveness when there is no ball. But that's in terms of, let's say, in the macro way of looking to the game, or in the big principle of the game idea. There is these similarities, but then there is difference, of course.
And spinning right back to the start of your career, Vitor, how did you get started in coaching?
So I was a player in a really low level. Let's say I was influenced when I was a teenager, let's say like that. I really liked sports. I played football. And then around 2003, 2004, when Jose Mourinho started in FC Porto, it was a big boom in Portugal, because was someone with a different background and was as well someone with a different idea in terms of training, even in terms of game for that time. And it really, in my feeling, opened my mind and passion about something, about a way of being in football. And I just started to love coaching. And since that moment on, all my development was in that way. So with 18, I started taking the UEFA courses in Portugal. And at the same time, I started in the university. And that was developed in a way that I started in my club where I was playing. And then I moved to another club. And then I got the opportunity to go to FC Porto youth teams. That was brought by Professor Vitor Frade and Luis Castro as the technical director. That's where I met Pep, went to China, back to Porto, and then Liverpool. And that's more or less, in a short way, my trajectory until the moment.
Yeah, fantastic. Can you remember when you first met Pep and what you thought about him?
Yeah, so Pep was already in Porto when I arrived. He was the head of developing the technical part of the players and the head of this department. Also, he was working in every team of the club, and at the same time with the best talents of the club. So he was really someone with a lot of passion, like he is still someone completely full of energy in terms of developing and love for the players and love for the talent of the players. And that's, I believe, why we connected so good as well. So I was one of the coaches. So for example, we had 3 training sessions per week and 1 game day. So Pep was responsible for one of these days with the coach as well. And that's how we started, sharing ideas, sharing opinions, connecting between, and just become a really, really good and close friendship. And that's how it started.
What were the main things you learned from him in terms of coaching, would you say?
Someone really passionate about it. Someone that always tries to improve the team, tries to improve the players, tries to be better every day. And I would say someone that have really creativity in finding solutions for different problems that comes from the game. And that was something that always brought us together. And Pep is always a big reference for me.
And you talked as well about Vitor Frade being a big influence on you. And he's someone that people have mentioned a lot on our podcast. Rui Faria studied, I think, under him as well, and he's talked about him. Could you tell us a little bit more about Vitor Frade and his influence on you?
Yeah, so Vitor Frade was my teacher in the university. I knew him before from the influence that he had on Rui and Jose Mourinho as well. So when I was around that age that I spoke before, I started searching about football, about training, and I found this idea that was tactical periodization that came from Vitor Frade. That's how I decided to go on the University of Porto, Sports University of Porto. And that's where I met him. And it was completely overwhelming in terms of blowing your mind for different way of viewing football and viewing as well training. So until a moment, the physical part of the game and of the players was what conducted the process and was the main idea regarding training. And from that moment on, when I met Professor Vitor Frade and then I started searching about it as well, it showed you a complete different way, a way related with complexity, a systemic approach, a way to understand that a football player, more than developing by only one dimension, that is his physical part, it's about playing and it's about developing him under an idea, and that is the game idea of the coach. And that information of the brain is what influenced the fitness part of the player. And that was a complete different view that I completely fall in love, because it's at the same time is intuitive for the coach, because the main idea is that it helps you to organize your game idea and it helps you to develop your game idea with your team. And that's the main idea, to develop your tactical organization or the tactical culture of your team.
And we're seeing top Portuguese coaches all over the world now. It seems to be one of the top countries for coaching. What do you think are the reasons for that? You've mentioned Vitor Frade, Jose Mourinho being an inspiration. Are there any other reasons, do you think?
I think football is a big thing in Portugal in terms of sports and the passion that the people have about football. Same as in England, of course. But there was, yes, of course, there was a big influence of different names. So there was Carlos Queiroz, that was a big influence in terms of coach developing in Portugal, and then Jose Mourinho in terms of big developing culture with the way he stepped and won so much. It created a big boom in terms of open doors for everyone. Of course, in the background, Vitor Frade, in terms of idea, in terms of process, in terms of how he opened the mind and the view regarding the game and the training, that was a big influence in Portugal. But if you ask me why there is so many coaches, I think this part of Portuguese coaches having success in different countries, in different contexts, that helped a lot to open the doors for other ones. I think that's the main thing.
We're asking a lot of questions about English coaching at the moment in this country, because I think there's more Portuguese managers in the Premier League than English managers. We're not seeing many working abroad, really. Have you got any reasons as to why that would be the case, why we are struggling a bit? We've got a foreign manager of the England national team as well.
No, I don't have an answer to you, Simon. I believe there is good English managers. For example, Porto had Bobby Robson as one of the best managers that we had in the club, and he influenced so much the culture of the club here in Portugal and so much the country as well. And Mourinho worked with him, and Vitor Frade as well worked with him. So you see already the influence that an English coach had here in Portugal. And I think you have good coaches. You have Eddie Howe, who just won the Carabao Cup. We had Brendan Rodgers, we had Russell Martin as a new upcoming with a completely different approach that I would say from the traditional English way of seeing the game. So I think there's a lot of good managers, and I believe that it will happen the same. It's always like this. The football is like a cycle, no? And if there is someone with success in a country or in a league or in the competition, it opens the door for a different one. That's always the case. But I think using these managers as a reference in terms of developing coaches in England, I think that's a big thing. I think that was one of the things that for me was really important. That was how it was so much work around Jose Mourinho in Portugal, how it was so much work about a different coaches that were in high level, that allow a new generation of coaches to learn and to reflect and to improve. And using these references, using these ideas, I think that is a big part of the developing of coaches.
And it sounds like you started your badges and your coaching very young from what you were saying, which I wonder if that's a big help as well.
It's just a help because I had the lucky to find really early what I really loved. So that was the biggest help it made for me, no more than that. And that I was in an early age as well exposed to the training and exposed to football. So I was able to being in football always, but at the same time, because I start earlier, I was able to experience and to try different things, and that allowed my development, of course. But this was just a matter of, okay, I was lucky to find something that I was really passionate about it, and I just started. So I don't think that's the only way. I think there's a lot of different ways as well. And you can see on the top level of coaches, all of the managers had different ways to arrive there. Guardiola had one way, Jurgen had another way, Mourinho had one way as well. So there's a lot of different ways to arrive on that level. I just think is really important that you try, you reflect on what you did, and you try to improve. And you try to be open-minded regarding new ideas, be open-minded regarding new solutions, and that you be passionate about something. That's, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah, fantastic. And if we go forwards to 2019, you got the call from Liverpool to come across as the elite development coach. So could you tell us a little bit about how that move came about?
I was in B team of Porto. On that time, Jurgen and Pep had the feeling that they need someone. So Pep had already that role before. And they had no one on that role. And they had the feeling that they needed someone that could take care of the players that were between the first team and the second team. So the players who the club believe have the best potential in medium term and short term, and at the same time that could relate the first team and the second team in terms of game idea and training methodology. So Pep spoke with me and introduced me to Jurgen and to the club, and that's how it started.
What exactly would that job involve on sort of a week-to-week basis? Because it was still quite a new title at that time and quite a new idea for a role.
The main ideas were connecting the two teams. So in terms of concepts regarding the game style, so that when the first team staff and the manager of the first team, in this case Jurgen, went to watch or was going to watch a game of the second team, that he recognized an idea close to the first team, that they were able to press, that they were able to counter press, that they were able to be dominant on the opposition half, that they were able to be with energy and with aggressiveness in terms of offensive style. So these needed to be there on the second team. At the same time, connecting in terms of training methodology idea that in a way that could help the player to have more consistency in terms of developing, and that when he was coming to the first team, you were able to perform better because he was making decisions on the second team with the same idea or with a similar idea of the first team. So he was making more and more decisions. So when we was coming to the first team, a lot of things were much more fluid and was much more natural. At the same time that we were able to have a better, let's say, control regarding the individual development of the players. So what were the needs for allow them to compete in a high level and develop that needs, and at the same time potentialize the best skills that they had, okay? So, and refine a few things. So that were the three major things. And with that, our idea was to expose the players and being able to step by step expose them to the first team in an early age, that when the transition would come, it will be much smoother. They will be much more comfortable, they will be much more confident, and at the same time that will help them to settle. So with that we created the training group, or the talent group, if we want to call it. And this was with the best players of the academy. And this was not a fixed group. We could have decided to call just the strikers of the under 16s, under 18s and second team. We could just call the midfielders. We could just call the back four. And we worked with them, with the first team staff. So it was me and Pep doing the training sessions. Jurgen was watching. The fitness coach of the first team is there. The goalkeeper coach of the first team is there. And they train on the first team side. So this creates already a relationship. And when the manager starts having a connection with these players as well, it becomes everything much more easier. When there is a need, for example, that there's not a player, you will feel much more confidence to bring a player from the academy. And that's how you create a culture. So it end up with creating as well a cage, the Melwood Arena. That was something regarding that, to bring this natural spirit of football when you were a kid. And that was, of course, for the first team, but at the same time, it was a big boost in terms of the individual development for the players, because you play in a cage 4v4, ball doesn't go out, always with rhythm and with an idea. And you play like you're playing in the street, and that creates a complete different boost in terms of development. There was a process that started and was developed, and our idea was to really create this inside pathway, much more smoother, and at the same time that we could expose the players step by step to the high level and to the first team and make them doing the next step.
And in your role, would you lead a training session yourself then with that group of players, say the talent group? Would you be on your own leading that session with them?
Yeah. So that was the case. That's how it started. So the main idea on the beginning was to really be on the pitch with the second team coach. At the same time, you need to bring the coach together with the idea, because it's something that doesn't come from the inside of them. So you need to develop them according to the idea, game style and training methodology. So you need to bring the coach together. They need to see it. They need to feel it. So that it was. Or normally on a day I will be with the first team training session, let's say in the afternoon, helping on the pitch, and I will do, let's say, with this group of players or with the second team that was under 23 on that time, under 21s now, on the pitch as well. So that was the idea. Or the other way around, I could be with the first team on the morning and second team on the afternoon. And that's how it started in the end. And I would say after a few time, I was much more involved with the first team, and the process was much more on the hands of the under 21 manager. Because when you start developing, understanding, it becomes the process, it becomes a natural part of it as well. So you just, in a way, you manage the process by watching it and by seeing, and sometimes, of course, meetings and these kind of things. And I was able to be completely involved with the first team. So that's how it was.
And I suppose the very fact that you had this role and you had this talent group, it shows how committed the club and Jurgen were to bringing players through from the academy into the first team. It's not like that at every club, is it?
No. I always say, if you don't have the right manager, you can have the best academy project, because it will not happen. So, of course, the culture of the club demands that from the manager as well. And I think when you are choosing a manager, and if you think on this, you need to choose the manager with the right profile for that. Of course, the only way to do this, or the best way to do this, is because Jurgen was there for so long, and that's the truth as well. And you win, and you have more time. That's the winning is the best vitamin to every process, and at the same time, the best thing that you can have to create stability. So that's how it happened. There was development. Jurgen were able to stay there for so long, so everything makes sense to have these kind of things.
Who were the players that were coming through at that time who you were working with? I'm thinking, Harvey Elliott, Curtis Jones.
Yeah, on that time when I arrived, there was that generation. So we had as well Nico Williams, Sepp van der Berg, Kijana. That was the generation of that players on that time.
And we've just seen Curtis Jones started for England on Friday. Gerald Quansah in the squad, another of the players that I think you work with.
Yeah.
So, how impressed have you been by their development?
Different characters, different approaches. Jarrell was the last one, and it was a really impressive development of him by a kid that was full of talent, but more than everything, really, really smart. Always trying to understand from the main ones, let's say in this case from Virgil, and at the same time really open in terms of his development. So trying to understand what was his problems and find a way, one, to develop them, and another one to find ways to have other solutions to hide that problems, because that's what happened as well. So when you are slow, you try to anticipate more. And you try to improve that other part, but that's how it should be. And Jarrell was this kind of player, really with the process. On the last season, he was completely outstanding, I would say. The high level he reached was so quick, but at the same time so consistent, that showed all his quality. And Jurgen was a big advocate of him as well. Then Curtis was different. Curtis was already a big talent in the academy, technical-wise, outstanding. Character-wise, he doesn't need, he has enough confidence for all of us, and he needed to step up in terms of game understanding, and that's how it was. So for him was completely a different approach. Sometimes it's really hard, this kind of approach, because the line is so thin when you are trying to make a player aware that his game understanding needs to improve and where to use sometimes a different type of pass. It's better to turn instead of playing back. And sometimes this is tricky, because it can decrease his confidence, let's say like that. He can take his confidence, and at the same time, he can stop his intuition, and he doesn't feel more comfortable by playing because he's trying to do something that is not natural. So this thin part of that is really important, to have this sensibility and to give time as well. And I think he stepped up really good. He's outstanding player. I think he's a really outstanding midfielder. He has everything. He has physical, he has technical, he has game understanding, he has the character. He's an outstanding player. I like him a lot.
Will those two players keep developing, do you think? Keep getting better?
Yeah, I think it always depends in these situations as well. It always depends of the team. Of the moment of the team, of the players around them. It's always possible for every player to improve, but at the same time to grow inside of a collective approach. So let's say Sadio, Bobby and Mo, they were all excellent players when they arrived at Liverpool, but the relationship the three create between them, that's what make them do the next step. So it's always about that as well with the players, and that's what I hope for them.
Everyone is looking for a new edge. To find it, you need fresh perspectives. Our sponsor, Genius Sports, uses advanced AI, unique mesh tracking data, and tactical video to help analysts and coaches see and understand the game from every possible angle. This includes player POVs from the 3D recreation tool that sits within their performance studio, already being used by top clubs in the Premier League, Ligue 1, Pro League, and more. Genius pairs football's most extensive tracking data set ever with multiple automatically synced video angles for the fastest, smartest insights. Join the world's top clubs and find your new edge today. Learn more at www.geniussports.com/TGG.
It's always quite a complex process, isn't it, development? Because you've got to decide whether you keep the player in the building, maybe send them out on loan. You know, what are the best things for their development? So how do you go about that? What are the considerations there?
It's a good question, because in my opinion, it always depends on the player, and you never know by certain for many reasons. When you send a player on loan, you try to control the process as much as you can, because you want to send him to the best club for him with the best possible manager, playing all the time, but you never know. You never know who will be next to him. You never know if the manager gets the sack. You never know if it's the right environment in the end. But at the same time, you expose them. You expose them to a different process. You expose to a different training methodology, to maybe a different game idea. So the player needs to step up, let's say like that. And one thing that sometimes helps is, and in England, this second market is so big of the loan players that you are able to send a player sometimes with 18 to a League One club, and you expose him to a professional level already in an early age. So it's possible both ways. And what we try was to find a process that allow us to have a better decision on this. So on the timing for him to go on loan, and at the same time if it was really the better pathway. And what our idea was to first expose them to the first team training sessions. Of course, the talent group was really important on this because you start by knowing the players individually as well. Expose them to the first team training session, so you know them on the training, you know them by expose them to the first team level, how they are on that moment, but you can try to see how it will be. You know their character, you start knowing what they really need in short and medium term. And then it comes the squad planning and which space they will have on that squad planning. And if that space, it will be enough for their continuing their development. And that's the decision needs to be made. So it's better. That's why in the end, we start having more a period of loan in the end, on the second part of the season, because on the first part of the season, you have all the competitions. So you have the FA Cup, you have the League Cup, you have the Champions League or Europa League, and you have the Premier League. So there's so many competitions that in the end, they will have space, and that will be the exposure. So we want to expose them to these moments and then make this decision. So you had that situation, for example, with Connor Bradley and with Jarrell. They went on loan, Jarrell on the last part of the season, Connor from the beginning, but we had the feeling that he could already step up on that season already. But because the space for him was not so clear, okay, the club decided to send him on loan, and he had a brilliant time on Bolton. And Jarrell was just from January on, and Curtis was never on loan. So his different decisions regarding the moment of the player on that year or on that season, and regarding how it will be in terms of space. And then of course the player expectations, they need to understand that some players are more rush and they prefer to be on loan and play than having this process of training under 21s game, and then maybe first team game, maybe bench on the first team, then you need to be exposed on the second team or let's say under 21s. So it always depends on this as well, and you always try to find the best one. Is the best process. It's not 100%, never 100%, but you always try to be as certain as possible.
So did Curtis not go on loan because the manager thought he could become part of the first team squad quicker than the other guys? Was that the reason?
Not quicker, Simon. The question was, one, Curtis had this character that he wanted to prove himself all the time on the first team. So he never wanted the pathway of proving himself out of Liverpool. Okay. So it gives you already one direction. And second was his exposure in terms of game was always good enough for his development. So he had a space, he was having consistency, exposure, and at the same time the developing was still coming, and that gives you the feeling, okay, you can still go, there's no need. Of course, if there's a Premier League club who will ask him to go on loan, maybe his mind could change, but it's always like this. In the end, I always believe that if the view of the club is that the academy forces the development for the first team, if there is a clear culture in terms of the club, if you develop the academy in a way that is a relationship between the game style, training methodology, and the first team at the same time, the player starts having decisions on that way. They start learning why they lose with that game style and why they win with that game style. And that creates development in a certain way. And that, of course, it helps the players to settle in the first team. So you can control the environment. So, you send a player on loan, sometimes you cannot control the environment. You never know. You have a loan manager, you try to be close to the player, you try to connect all the departments around him between the clubs, but in the end, you don't know. So I think it's a process that always need the right people around to decide. I think also is a process that is not a clear one and there's no clear pathway on both. More than just thinking on market and thinking on profit with these kind of situations, the club really needs to think on the asset. Of course, there is players as well. If you are not thinking on them that they can be on the first team in a short or medium time, maybe it's better them to go on loan to create a market for themselves as well. And that's a kind of a different way. But when you start seeing that they can make a step in the first team, there will be a lot of opportunities on the first part of the season because there's all the competitions are there. So maybe you can delay that decision until January and then you can make the decision January on and see game exposure, yes, not, how is development. Still, there is still space. He improves so much that he is a consistent part of the squad and he will have game time. So these decisions, they always need to be made.
And who should we be looking out for in the next generation of talent, do you think, after that one?
Yeah, I don't want to brush anyone because that's a lot. I know how in England works. He becomes a god in one day and in the next day he's below everything. So, but there is a lot of players, already. Jadon Danz is outstanding. I think he has a big talent as a striker. And Trey Ione is another one. I think all these players that they are there knocking on the door, for sure I will be really happy to see them on the high level.
Yeah, brilliant. And what was it like working with Jurgen Klopp? What made him so special?
Everything. I think for me was a life experience and a life journey. So I learned so much. I was so lucky to be involved. I will be always grateful for being for him and of course Pep to open the door for me. That was someone coming from outside of the staff that Jurgen didn't know and allow me to work with such a high level of players and in a high level league. That's priceless. That's not something to explain. And that shows as well how he is, that he's completely open to new ideas, to new people, that he doesn't have afraid of giving opportunities and to help developing as well. And he's someone that with simple words can make you feel that you can conquer the world with him. And that's, he can generate so much inner motivation and self-motivation that you can conquer everything. And I think his this sensibility and his view of football is something really special.
And I read that he came in early on and he explained his philosophy to the players and the staff, and he said it is to attack all the time, when we have the ball, when we don't have the ball. As a very simple, powerful strap line there.
Yeah, I was not there when he arrived, but how I know him and how I know as well that was Liverpool on that moment, for sure he wanted to make an impact in terms of mentality, energy, willingness and togetherness. For sure that was his concern. For sure his concern was focus on the team and what can we improve straight on to be more competitive. And I think I really believe that will for sure his first words and for sure his first meeting. He's someone like that from the beginning he wants to create impact.
Were you shocked when he told you that he was going to leave?
No, not shocked, because it was not something that it came from night to day. It's something that you start speaking, and then in the end when he was this decision, he just spoke with his staff and we were all there to support him.
Could you have stayed on after he left?
For me it was really clear when I arrived that I wanted to live with Jurgen and with Pep. And when that decision came, it came as well the decision that when Pep has the next job, I wanted to go with him. And that was really clear for me from the beginning, because I wanted that experience as well. And I always feel that more than everything, this connection with the people we have around is so important. And I own that. And that for me was the most important thing on that time.
And Liverpool have done very, very well since you left. It may be a bit of a surprise for people how smooth the transition has seemed to be. I know they had a bad week last week, obviously, but overall very, very good. What are the main changes you've seen tactically with the team under Arne Slot?
I think, first of all, what Arne did, I think, is outstanding, no? Because it's not easy to replace Jurgen. We tried to leave the club, and Jurgen left the club in a really good moment in terms of when he arrived and when he left. The main idea was to leave the club in a better position. I think the squad that we left we all had the feeling that it was a squad ready to win titles as well. And they have an unbelievable team in terms of togetherness. But it's not easy. It's not easy to come to Liverpool. It's a big club. And at the same time, replacing Jurgen as someone that was so loved by everyone. And I think what Arne did is exceptional, of course. The game quality, and at the same time being able to win and win consistently, and that is the most important thing in terms of tactically. I think step by step it was on the direction of how Arne wants to play and what his style is. Defending, you can see a much more man-orientated press and less ball-orientated press. You can see players in different roles, and one of that is Ryan Gravenberg. I think he's doing an outstanding season playing as a number 6, and that's something that completely improved by itself the offensive game in terms of how the ball moved and how the ball break lines and how the direction he could give with one touch. And then there's some kind of dynamics. Some dynamics were already there in the past. Some dynamics were new in terms of the positioning, the fullbacks, how positioning the strikers and the 10 sometimes as well. Even defending a little bit different in terms of where starts the press on the pitch. A few differences, but most important thing I think was that there is a clear idea, and that this clear idea is related and is possible to achieve with the squad he has, and is possible to have consistently good performance, and that says a lot about Arne, and that says a lot about the whole club on the moment as well.
Did you see that Gravenberch could become this number 6, because he's been outstanding this season, and I didn't really see that he could become that player?
Yeah, we let's say now personally, sometimes this kind of thing happens. So a need creates an opportunity, and these opportunities sometimes it just creates a beautiful idea. I think in the beginning of the season, everyone spoke about Liverpool signing a number 6. And was quite public as well, the willing to find the number 6 to play there. And because there was no one, I believe because Alexis was as well coming from the Copa, if I'm not wrong, Ryan grabbed the spot, and he grabbed it completely outstanding. And that creates a different dynamic and create a different thing. So we never used Ryan on that position because as well, Alexis and Ouattara were doing outstanding for us. And Ryan arrived in the club a lot, I would say almost one season without game time. So game time, one moment or another, so not consistently playing, arrived in Liverpool, adapting, starting to play and then injured, and then coming back again, starting to play and then injured. So it was not easy for him to adapt. We all saw his potential. We saw his potential already when we play against Ajax when he was there. And then we were not able to catch him on that transfer window. So he went to Bayern, but we all are, especially Jurgen and Pep, big believers of him. And we all saw his potential in terms of quality. So it was a matter of consistency and a matter of opportunity. So I think in this season, everything came together, and I'm really happy for him, and I'm really happy for Liverpool as well, because he's outstanding.
You said that the pressing had changed slightly. Could you just tell us a little bit more about that, please, with your expert eye?
I think we can see a much more man-orientated press, especially in the midfielders. They control much more the man than the space by itself. And that changed how it starts and how the spaces can change as well. And at the same time, I think there's different game plans. In one game, we can see maybe Liverpool pressing from the first moment higher, and in another game, we can see an approach that they are much more they start with much more in a mid block, for example. So these different approaches, it changed. It's not about being better or worse. It's about doing differently. So they are doing this different, and on this season, they have having a lot of success, so that's good.
And is that the same with the positioning of the fullbacks and the forwards that you talked about then? That's adapting depending on the opponent?
Yeah, I think the triggers are changing regarding who starts the press and who then follows. But I was saying attacking-wise, there's sometimes different starting positions for the fullbacks. Sometimes they start more in deeper lines or much more facing the game close to the center halves, and that was not all the games like that. I think, like I said, there's different approaches on different games in terms of dynamics, and that's what I've seen so far.
And what are your own ambitions for the future now, Vitor?
My own ambitions, Simon, is I have really clear in my mind that I want to start as a manager. That's the main ambition. Now it's just to find a place, to find a project. I did my process until now. I develop myself. I try to learn. I try to keep improving. I learn about myself a lot as well. I want to know myself more on this role as well. So I think that in this moment I'm ready, and that I feel completely comfortable with the role and with the expectations. So I think that's how I feel now.
Would you like to come back to England?
Yeah. It's a place that everyone loves football, and it's a place where you feel a manager, where you feel like a coach. And I loved to live in England, in Liverpool for more precise, but I loved football in England. That's what I can say. So, of course, it's a place that I would love to be as well.
What sort of club would you like to work at? Would it have to be high level, or could it be further down the leagues?
No. I have really clear for me that more than everything, I want to feel a connection with the people that are in the club, with the board, with the owner, with the sports director. And that only comes when you start speaking with the people. And when I have this connection, when I have this feeling, when I have this emotionally connection with the club, it stays in my mind and it will not move out. And I now on that moment I will say, okay, that's the place I want to be. More than making a decision already regarding which level I want to start, I think I want to start where I will feel this connection. That is the most important thing, because if you ask 99% of the coaches, they will all say to you, yeah, we all want a project with sustainability, with a big budget, with the possibility to fight for titles. Of course, everyone wants that. That's true. But what I want is feel a connection with the people on the club, feel that is a place where I can be happy with my family, and feel that is a place where I can create an impact. If I feel that, it will be the place.
Fantastic. And I had just one final question for you, please. We've asked a few of the guests this, like we had Michael Beale on, and we asked about one of his favourite training exercises that he could pass on to other coaches. He talked about 3v3 box game, he called it. Have you got a favourite exercise of your own that you could share with the listeners?
A favourite exercise?
Or training session or tip?
I never thought about that. What is my favourite training exercise? I know 100% that will be by game or by playing. I would say, I like Pep call it the identity game. So it's a 3 teams game. You could play it 4v4 and 4 are waiting. You can play it in 5 aside, you can play it 7 aside, you can even play it in 8 aside. And the most important thing is that you can compete, you can play, and that you play in the different parts of the pitch. So one team, for example, is defending the goal and trying to break the middle line, and the other team is higher on the pitch trying to score, but they need to have a proper counter-pressing idea because they need to defend the line. And then if the other team breaks the line, they were able to attack the waiting team on the other half, and they are now on the other part of the pitch. So they are now, instead of trying to build over the press, they are now higher and trying to break the other team that is in the other wall. So I like a lot that one because there's a lot of things. You can manipulate the structures, you can manipulate the players. So it's simple. I really like that. I would say I like that one, and I like pressing rondo. That one is the one I will for sure choose. Pressing rondo, you can do it, for example, 3 teams of 3, and one team is defending, 2 are attacking with the ball. One team lose the ball, completely counter press, and it change the role. So then start defending, and the other one starts attacking, and it goes like that. So I like these ones, but I also love doing finishing.
You had some good finishers to work with, yeah?
Yeah. That helps a lot, huh? When you do a finishing exercise and they can perform, that changes completely your view on that. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Vitor, and good luck with the rest of your career.
Thank you, Simon. It was a pleasure to being here and speaking with you.
Thank you for listening to the Training Ground Guru podcast in association with Genius Sports. We'll be back next month with another episode.